All right, hey guys, it's Alan with Common Worship Solutions. Today we're in my studio and we're talking about the Behringer Wing Rack Console. So if you're like me, or if you're like Mark, probably most people, you've heard of the Behringer Wing as kind of when it came out about 5-6 years ago, it was coined as finally a bigger X32 because everybody and their mama has an X32 because it's a great console. It also came out 12-14 years ago, something along those lines. And so officially it's probably kind of an outdated, older console now. Still has a great use if you have one working and you have no additional needs, probably no reason to replace it. But if you need expansion, which is what most people ran into, they wanted more than 32 channels, but did not want to spend the money for a large console because it wasn't just a little bit more money, it was a lot of bit more money. The X32 was a $3,000 console. It wrecked the industry in the best of ways. It was the first digital console that was really under $8,000-$10,000, especially for more than 16 channels. It had 32 channels, buses, effects, everything built in for $3,000. That's why everybody bought one. But then the problem was there were bigger venues that had even older consoles that were 64 channels, 48 channels, 128 channels that were starting to die. And they realized they still didn't have an option but to spend $20,000, $40,000, even more on a new console just to get that high channel count. And so a few years into the X32's life, Behringer came out with a new product that was finally supposed to be the better X32. It was supposed to be a similar thing but had more channels, had more of everything, and was a similar price point. It was, I think it was maybe $4,000, $5,000, something like that when it came out. Big problem though is that it seems like they did not put enough development into this. Something went wrong. These consoles that came out, I think it was 2019, they had some software bugs. They weren't easy to use like the X32. It didn't make sense. It kind of looked goofy. One big thing was if you were a mobile environment, if you had to tour with this console, it had a bunch of weird shapes physically on it, and it was breakable. Things were not sturdy like the X32 was relatively sturdy. It took a bigger case to put it in. It was kind of awkward, and it just was unappealing to a lot of people. If it was sitting still, that at least fixed that problem, but there were still the issues of the software not making sense, not working well. It just didn't catch on. It was kind of a flop. Some people bought them. We saw them pop up in some churches, some touring houses, some production companies, different things like that, even some studios. But it was nowhere near the success of the X32 series. Now, a few years later, they've kind of revamped it and taken another look at it. And I think they did this because they knew that the X32s would actually start dying around this time because no technology lasts realistically more than 10 years normally. Sometimes you get something that keeps on puttering, but everything starts to die around that 10, 12, 14-year period. So they realized it wasn't just a need for an upgrade for some customers, but it was a need for a replacement. And so I think that this is my assumption, but it kind of gave them more of an urgency to make the wing right. And so they fixed the software. They got everything functioning a lot better, made a lot more sense, sounded better even somehow, and they released other versions of the wing to try to help mitigate some of the weird physical aspects of it. They still make that one, and they make it in black now as well. That's the full-size wing console. They lowered the price on it, I believe. I think it was more expensive, and now it's $3,500, something around there. And then they made a compact that's just the same thing but smaller. And then they made a rack version, which is what we've had in the X32 for all these years as well. And me and Mark have loved the X32 rack because it's, one, cheaper than the full-size console. It's $1,200 at one point. You could buy a full X32, even though it didn't have all the physical I/O, you could add snakes, which most people have anyway. You had a full X32, you just didn't have physical faders. That was pretty much the only thing. It still had a physical screen if you needed it, but if you had an iPad, if you had a computer, if you had anything else to control it with, especially in a mobile environment, it took up no space. It was cheap. It was very rugged because it sits in a rack. And so when they came out with the wing rack, I said, now that I can get on board with because it's more rugged, still doesn't have that goofy design of the big one and the compact, which again are okay, still not great honestly to this day, but the wing rack is incredible. It has great software now. It's basically what I said earlier where it's an X32, just more. It has more channels. It has more effect slots. It has more buses. Channels and buses can be stereo instead of mono now. Excuse me, instead of mono now. You have 4 master buses instead of 2, a mono or a center and an LR that can be linked or unlinked in any capacity. You have 8 matrices instead of 6. You have 16 DCAs instead of 8. So it's kind of just more of everything. There are even some details that I'll show you in a minute where you can do more per channel instead of just a higher count, but it has more functionality within each thing as well. And this rack version, it's a little bit bigger. It's 4U instead of 3U in height, but with that comes a lot of goodies. It has a full touchscreen display that's a lot bigger and very usable with a finger now. It also can rotate out in case you actually have to use this. You don't have to get on the floor. You could have it racked up somewhere and just use it like a console somewhat. It's just way more user-friendly. It has a better layout. It's a lot simpler. On the back of it, it has 24 XLR/quarter-inch inputs now instead of just 16. Still only 8 outputs, but it now has all the wings functionality of 3 AES 50 ports, which are your EtherCon ports for snakes. It has a new type of snake that runs over an XLR cable they call Stage Connect. It has all of your network functionality, your USB interface functionality. It also comes with an SD card built in. On the X32, you could either have a USB only card, which came with it for an interface in and out from a computer, or you could get the SD card, which would record on SD cards. It also had a USB, but there were some limitations with that. Also, the card was a few $100s, so you had to do that upgrade. This one, the USB is not on a card at all, so it's always there, and they give you the SD card with it. So you can swap that out for a Dante card, a Waves card, anything else if you still want to, but it comes with that SD card recorder functionality, which is a great way to multi-track live if you don't have an extra computer sitting around to USB into, or if you're using the USB for some kind of playback or waves or something like that. You can have multi-track recording and a USB interface going simultaneously, and it's all built in. You don't have to buy anything extra. The price point on this is $1,600. All that for $1,600. There is not a console anywhere close to that. Allen & Heath makes great products. They're coming out with newer things that try to compete with this. Yamaha, there are several companies that make great products that are in this market ever since the X32, really. Everybody said, well, we got to make a $3,000 console. And so everybody started doing that. And that's fine. But none of them kept up with this. This kind of blew up the industry in a good way again, because it fixed everything of the Wing, first of all, and it's still cheaper than anything else for a 48-channel console. And so I really love these. I've been installing them at places that, venues that don't need a full console controller, don't have space for a full console control. And one thing I've been doing with them is either having iPad control or just the free app, and you can put it on any kind of PC or Mac. This is a Mac with a touchscreen Dell monitor, and you can just, in the same way as the X32, you just got touchscreen faders here. You got banks. You can do user layers, so you can put any random channel or DCA or a blank space and then a bus, and so you can make your own custom fader bank for transitions or music or speaking or whatever your moment is, and just switch between all these layers, and you have everything you need. Or if you're looking at a channel, you can come here and EQ with the touchscreen, which is really handy because you can just grab whatever control you need and move it around with your finger instead of having to use the knobs or try to figure it out. One thing this console has per channel, I was telling you about the additional features earlier. We now, instead of just having gate, EQ, compressor per channel, which we still have, and they have some advanced features now, like we have 6 bands instead of just 4. Even these high and low can be parametric, so you have a full 6-band EQ plus your high and low cut, so you can actually do a high and low cut, or a high pass filter and low pass filter, in addition to 6 bands. So it's really 8 bands compared to the, I guess, 5 on the other one, counting the low cut. But even if that's not enough functionality and you want something a little more creative or a little more studio-esque, before, if you wanted a modeled EQ, a modeled compressor, you'd have to dedicate an entire effects slot to it just for that one channel. If I wanted an 1176 compressor on a vocal, I had to take up one of my 8 effects slots on the X32 for that. So it's very precious cargo. Now, I can change it per channel, and I don't have every option, but I at least have some of the main options. I could do an SSL EQ on the channel itself, and it doesn't take up a single effect slot, which I still have more of now. I have 16 of them. Same with compressor. Instead of just the traditional compressor, I could choose an LA2A or an 1176, or a transient designer, or looks like a distressor, or a Focusrite. There's so many, a DBX. And so I could choose that and still have 2 insert slots additional if I wanted to actually dedicate an effect slot to that channel and have maybe an additional EQ. Then I could say effects 1, and I'm going to choose, if I don't want an effect, I just want an EQ, or maybe something even more advanced, like some kind of rotary speaker, there you go, or an enhancer, exciter. Those are things that aren't normally on a channel, but I could add it to that channel at that point. So, and that goes for buses as well. You can come bus, let's see, bus 1, I could also change it on the bus master without taking up an effects slot. So it's really, really jam-packed with features. There's your main sends. You click it again, or where do you click it here? Here it is for bus sends and matrix sends. And you got all your pre-post, all standard console things there. For scene saving, it's now a little bit more advanced. You have shows, snapshots, snippets. The X32 had some of these things, but it just makes more sense now. You have more scope options, or at least an easier layout of scope options. So if you want to recall just some routing things or just some monitor mix things, you could choose the scope and recall that for somebody's monitor mix without undoing all of your current mix things. That's an example of a scope recall. Routing is a lot easier now. The X32, it never made sense in how things were labeled. You had to sit down. Well, I still do this. You have to sit down and think about it every time just to make sure you're doing the right thing. Now you just choose output and say, I want something from that one, to go to, what did I do? I chose something weird. That one works for now. I want this to go there. Or, I know what I did. I got to choose one first. I want that to go there. And so it makes a lot more sense. You just see your source or output, same thing for inputs, just opposite, and you can just assign it, and it just makes sense. And you can actually label things here now as well as channels, so you're not just guessing at the number. You can actually label the routing and color it and all those things, so that you can, if you're routing quickly, you don't have to have some kind of cheat sheet. You just remember, everything's right there. Let's see, what else do we have here? I think that's a pretty good general overview of what the X30 or the Wing can do now. Let's see.
Talk about your setup you've built here.
Okay. So this setup is kind of an interesting setup. It's the idea, and it's not complete right now exactly. I normally have it sitting up higher to where I could actually use it. This is this top piece here that's not the rack. This is an old pedal board case, actually, that I built out to be a computer console control like you see here, but it also has space. It's not set up right now. It also has space for another one of these touchscreen monitors to mount kind of vertically right here, kind of like a laptop. And they're both the same thing. The bottom one normally operates off of this cheap Dell PC, because all it needs to do is control the Wing. The Wing app right here you see up. That's not a hard task. It's multi-touch. It's great. So I just use the PC only for that, and I have a separate keyboard mouse I'll put to the side if I need that, or just use the on-screen one. Then this is a much nicer Mac Studio that has hefty processing, and it's normally on the top screen here with this keyboard and trackpad, and what it runs is Waves. So, and it's on this screen right now, so I can show you. So I have Super Rack Performer running, so this is not Super Rack the traditional kind, which involves a server and a network and all these crazy expensive pieces. This is basically a native version of Super Rack. So it's $100 software that lets you run plugins for a console just through a USB cable. So it's not network, it's not as robust as having a separate server and all that, but it's a whole lot cheaper. And with a beefy Mac Studio, still very, very capable of plenty of processing power, computers these days, and very low latency because it just works. So the Mac Studio is doing only that, and it will run USB into the Wing, and then basically it comes preamp in, goes straight to the Waves system before it even hits a channel strip on the Wing console. And then I can add actual Waves plugins that I have, or other brands. I don't have my iLock plugged in right now, but I have Strymon reverbs and Sound Toys effects and Slate Digital and Baby Audio, all these different things in addition to all the Waves built-in ones that I have in some big packs of plugins. I can put that on every channel before it even hits the Wing. So the way I've used this is I've done all my processing, EQ, everything on Waves because I have more options, better sounds there, and then I use the Wing just as a mixer. I'm not doing any EQ on each channel. I'm using it just as a routing and mixing device. Even my buses and effects, I'm sending back into Waves for excuse me. Even my buses and effects, I'm sending back into Waves for better reverbs that I like more than the built-in ones. And even my master LR bus, I'll send back in here to have some master compression, a little bit of warmth from a tape emulation plugin or something along those lines. So especially in a broadcast environment, this would give you a lot of options for really not a lot of money. You just get whatever you want to spend in plugins. Maybe you already have some and you can activate a second license, and then you get the $100 app. And then, of course, a pretty nice computer, which is still a few $1,000s, of course. But if you have one that's a dual purpose, this one I have on a removable Visa mount, so I can actually take it out of this case and use it for video production or for a main stage rig for keyboard or guitar, things like that. So it's a multi-purpose case. It doesn't look the nicest, but it's got a couple patch bays on it. This unit actually has a network switch and a router built into it, so I can establish my own network if I want to walk around the venue with an iPad and control the Wing or Waves. That way you can actually control this software from an iPad as well. So I could have all this and an iPad to control both. And you notice I have my little Wi-Fi antennas right here. That's for the little router that's in there. I got that's network from the Wing, power in, power out. And then over here, this is for the PC. I have USBs for keyboard and mouse. I have another, if we have a house network, I can plug the switch into the house network that way. And then I got an HDMI out, different things like that. So it's just kind of a all-inclusive, I guess, control and Waves setup that goes with a rack-mounted console. I've done these in install environments as well that are a lot prettier and a little more spaced out, and Mark can add pictures of those. I recently did one of these, almost the exact same thing, at a nearby church. They have a crow's nest front of house booth because it's a multi-use auditorium that they use for a gym and all that, so they don't want an audio console sitting in there or to have to wheel it in and out every time they want to use the basketball court. So they have it sitting up there, but as you could imagine, it doesn't sound good from up there, so they have a guy sitting on the floor during services with an iPad mixing, but they still have a guy upstairs mixing broadcast, so they still need something up there, and they wanted to run Waves on the front of house system because it's a really nice PA, great band, all that, great room. And so I built a setup like this with two Wing racks, one doing monitors and broadcast, and then one doing front of house. And they wanted the Waves just on front of house for now. Maybe we'll add another Waves computer for the broadcast one day. And so we have two touchscreen monitors side by side, backlit keyboard, mouse, trackpad, and you can have each screen showing a different Wing console, or one showing broadcast Wing and front of house Waves, or kind of any configuration you want with a Mac and a PC. And then downstairs the guy has an iPad or two iPads if he wants to set up at a table somewhere, and he can switch back and forth between the Wing either console to help with ears or whatever it is, and then go an app over and control the Waves if he needs to change a de-esser on the vocal for some reason. And it's a really, really inexpensive, value-engineered way to have two 48 channel consoles with waves and separate mixes, all these things for really not a lot of money at all, because these are $1,600 each, and we put a $2,000 Mac Studio in and some touchscreen monitors and a couple $100 worth of plugins, and then my time to install it. And that's all we did, and it has the capacity of much, much larger systems that would be multiple five figures. And so we don't have to do it that way anymore, thanks to the Behringer Wing. So it's a very, very good console, and I still recommend the full-size ones, especially if you're not traveling with them. They're still great, especially now that they've updated the software on them. There's one at another nearby church that I just trained a team on, and we got that thing working really nice for them. It has a good layout, a good flow. They understood everything. It has a touch screen as well, even just the little one on it, so it's even more capable than the X32, and it's still a great price point. So that's the Behringer Wing.